Hi there. Thanks so much for tuning in today. I hope you'll stick around with me and paint these mixed florals in a glass jar. Today I'm using my Semi-Art and Sonnet watercolors. I have my size 10 round brush by Juting. And today I'm painting on my 300 GSM watercolor paper by B Paper Company. I also have my watercolor palette by Meaden and a jar of water and a dry cloth for dabbing any mistakes or puddles. Let's get started. So today I would like to paint some mixed flowers, and it's spring and Mother's Day, and so just was thinking some mixed flowers, and I don't exactly know which flowers and exactly what I want to do, what I want them in. So I'm flying by the seat of my pants here a little bit. I think I'll do them in a jar. And I think what I'll do is I think I'll start with indigo. It just makes such a pretty jar, and yeah, it goes with everything. It's just nice. Now this is the Semi-Art indigo, and so it is not quite as dark as some others. So I just want to start by pulling down kind of a wide side here, and then I want to just take some swipes, brush marks around the bottom. Just kind of join that there. And then I quickly want to go rinse my brush and pull from over here because I'd really like that blended, and then blend all of this and then just kind of pull this over. I like it. That works for me. And maybe take a little more pigment down here on this side and maybe right up under the top. Yeah, I like that. That's a good start. Okay, want a couple of peonies in here. So I'm going to start with my madder red, and I'll do one right here. Make these 3 kind of quick marks. These are just these simple petals, and then maybe come down here and kind of some little marks out of the sides and around the top. Fun, fun. This is still pretty wet, so I'm rinsing my brush and then dragging off a lot of that water because I don't want this soaked. And I'm just going to touch some of this pigment here just to kind of soften it, let some of that kind of bleed out. Okay, that's a good start for that. What if we do a sunflower? Let's start with these big petals. Now, I kind of wonder if this guy could be bigger, not exactly the same size as the peony. So let's try that. Just kind of lengthen those. I like to make these little slashy marks. For me, they just kind of are another way to add a little hint of a petal there that isn't necessarily, the focus or very visible. Or okay. Now, what if I do something that is like these purplish eucalyptus type things? And what if we just kind of do this over to the side, and I like to kind of think of where my stems would be, and then just kind of take this over here. Okay, these I'm just going to use some different brush strokes. Some of these slashy things work really well in there because they're like sideways leaves or petals. And just all the different directions. Okay, now while this peony is still a bit wet, I'd like to make just a little more depth in here by dropping in some pigment. Just kind of layering some little petal marks in there. And then I'd like to have some of these, just some little multi-leaf stems. And I'd like to have some coming out here. And just kind of, I like when they kind of angle up a little. And then how about one more coming out this way? Okay, want to add a few more layers in this sunflower, and I like to do that. I think that this is a yellow ochre. This is actually from a different palette, and but it works, and it gives me a nice, just a kind of a brown layer. And I like to put some of this behind some of these petals and in between. And I like these imperfect and messy. Now, that's me. You do what you like. And sometimes a little definition in between some of these petals. But we'll see. We'll let that dry and we'll see what we have. And what if we do another little peony up here? Just kind of not turned away from us necessarily, but maybe turned a little more upward. Yeah. Yeah, that works for me. Just putting in all these random flowers that maybe would be in a bouquet around Mother's Day. And just pushing a little of that pigment here and there where it needs a little more softening, and maybe drop a bit more pigment in. Just lightly. You don't want to just obliterate all the softness. And how about 2 little sunflowers? Maybe just one kind of out behind here, and then one going this way. Those had quite a bit of water in them, so we'll see what they look like when they dry. They may need a little tune up, and that's okay. These purple flowers could use a bit more, just a few more leaves, whatever these are, leaves. So I'm just going to layer in some pigment here, hoping not to just obliterate everything, but to add another layer. Just lends to the depth of it. Okay, there we go. I'm gonna add a little more of this madder red, just to make this a little deeper in the front. And then brushing a few more petals into that. And then let's do a little more here too. Take a bit of this Hawker's green that I made these leafy stems with and just kind of bring that stem into the water, but also give this some more depth by brushing some extra leaves on it. Just so they kind of overlap. Okay, and then let's get some olive green and get some of these, some leaves for these sunflowers. I like to kind of drag my brush on the side and then to a point for those. I kind of do them differently. You know, I try not to do them always the same either, especially in a single painting. But I do find that drag technique helps me to get kind of just some looseness, I think, in my leaves. You can always drag that pigment from the tip back down to the stem if you like. I will often do that. Just getting a little, where my leaves are a little dry, trying to add a little detail there of just some little veins. And kind of add another brush stroke here and there for some depth. And then how about we give these some stems? And then get these stemmed up here. I think that works. And let's get some of these little, I just like to have some of those little wispy things. Okay, how about some stems for these peonies? And kind of mix a little bit of green for some of those leaves. Okay, I'm just going to do some fill in behind here. Just some different leaves. just filling in with just some simple brush strokes that, you know, they kind of seem leafish, but it doesn't really matter. Just kind of some things to fill in some of this white space back here. Okay, I'm loving that. I'm kind of losing the light, and I want to be quick about this just so that the recording isn't crazy different. But just get some more of my other layer, my yellow ochre. I think that was just still kind of too wet. Just get some of that in here, and not really worrying about it. This was meant to be fast and loose. Okay, let's get some yellow into these peony centers. Have that little sunflower peeking out back there. What if we have something peeking out over here that looks like a peony? We'll come back to that. I'm going to get some lamp black. Sometimes I use a really dark brown, but I'm going to use my black for these sunflower centers. And now my warning to you is always check your ferrule there, that it doesn't have a lot of water on it, so that you don't end up with a flood of black going down into your sunflower and just decimating the petals, because it will, and you don't want to know, you don't want to have to learn it the hard way. Don't be like me, she said. And then I just like to kind of dot this in as if you can see some of the whites from some of the sunflowers. Now my sunflowers up here are not quite dry enough, I don't think, to really add this. And I could use a little dryer, but I don't have one handy. So I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to try to let it dry. While that's going on, I'm going to see if I can push around some of the pigment from these stems by just adding a bit of water. And then I really added quite a bit of water over here, and so I'm going to just soak that up a little bit with my brush. I just rinsed my brush and then dried it off on my cloth and then soaked some of that like a sponge. And then I'm just going to push some of this pigment out so that it looks a little blurred from being in the water and being seen through the glass. Add a little shadow. Sometimes I like to add this little shadow in the same shade as my jar. Probably didn't need this to go way over here, but look, we're in a hurry. And it's okay. Just dab that a little. Maybe I can push some of that pigment, but it's really fine. It does not matter. Maybe this would like a little more pigment over here. Just a bit more shadow in that. I thought it was still pretty wet to be able to just kind of drop that in, but it's a little more than that, wasn't it? Okay, a little bit of yellow inside that peony, and then I'll do blacks in those sunflowers, and we're going to call that done. one other thing I sometimes do. I don't always do it, but sometimes I add a little table line or something back there. You can certainly do that if it helps you with grounding that that vase. This is gonna go really easy here. And that is kind of bleeding there, but I'm just going to dab those. That black just kind of bled into that, so I'm just dabbing that, and I'll just redo it because hopefully I've dried enough that was in that yellow. Okay, and I'm just going to call that finished. It's kind of gotten dark, and I think I could probably come back and add a few more layers around this black center. I could also kind of round that just a tiny bit. It's a bit pointy in some places, and I do kind of do these sunflowers with a little more precision, possibly, and maybe some black in that one there. It's kind of hard to tell if that one would be turning away, and so maybe I'll just leave that one actually. So that's what I would do. I hope that you enjoyed tuning in today. I hope you painted, or that you'll save this to paint. It was delightful. It was so fun. Just paint something. Just do the art that you feel like doing today. And if it's painting, wonderful. And I'd love to see it. DM me on my Instagram. You're welcome to do that. That's petite_mesquite_studio. I'd love to see your work. And most of all, I just love hearing from you that you are engaging with the content in a way that is giving you some inspiration and hopefully some fulfillment, just some joy. We all deserve some joy. And so I was happy to have you here today. I was so happy to paint with you. And as always, happy painting.